Hello and welcome to the guide for the last boss of the first Criterion dungeon. Remember that the Savage version of this works exactly the same, so it applies to both fights. Show of Strength is the AoE of the fight, and it's just as basic as it gets, raw damage. Cryptic Portals is the first mechanic of the fight. 4 teleporters spawn in the arena, 2 of them north, 2 of them south. We split into supports north and DPS south, so there's 1 melee on both sides for uptime, as doing maximal amount of damage to this boss is really helpful, as we will find out later. I always stand on the fire portal, but it's of no significance. It just helps me imagine the rotation better, so if you want to do that, if not, then not. Once you identify the rotation, in most cases there will be an obvious safe corner that the rangers can just go into. The melee uptime spot is then right between the 2 portals, closest to the safe corner. There's one pattern shown now that has a scuffed position. There's no corner safe. Right at this corner there will be a fire, so you have to go to the left corner of that square, but this pattern is really rare, but here's footage of it. Now the boss will jump on 2 random targets and knocking people in the area back, so standing in those exact corners precisely is really important. People who get jumped on get a vuln up and will be targeted with cleaves shortly after. Those cleaves will kill you if nobody stands in front of you without a vuln up, so usually we have supports grouped and DPS grouped, but in case both supports got jumped on, which can happen, we go ranged with ranged and melees with melees. For no other reason than that's what's comfortable for us. If you want to change that system, go ahead and change it. It is just really important that the person without the vulnerability up stands in front of the person with vulnerability up. That's the only thing you have to worry about. The Tank Buster will follow up shortly after. That has to be taken away from the party, as it is a huge pizza AoE. The next mechanic is called Cryptic Flames, and I promise it is not as bad as it looks like at first glance. So let's break it down. All 4 players will get a number debuff 1 to 4 that will allow you to break the lasers of the specific number. Both red and blue, both work. You have to break both of them in the end anyways. You have to break them in order though, so 1 goes first, then 2, then 3, and then 4. Whether you have to break blue first or red first is decided by the first E11S-like mirrors that spawn. You always want to clear the lasers facing in the same direction as the mirrors first, in this case blue. Be mindful that you have to pre-position in a corner where you are closest to both lasers of your number, otherwise you might get trapped later. So, the first set of mirrors spawn, leaving 1 safe lane, and you coordinate 1, 2, 3, 4 in succession to free everyone from their corner and let them into the safe lane. Now the boss will do Hades like Shadow Floors AoE that have to be avoided, unlike me right here trying to find the snapshot for no reason. Just ignore me, dodge them. Now you break the second set of lasers to avoid the second mirrors, and the mechanic is over. This will need a bit of practice, but once you can identify your safe spot consistently, it will become really comfortable. Another Tank Buster that has to be taken away from the party, and next up is probably the hardest mechanic for the brain, so sit down and grab something to drink. The boss will spawn 4 rods and 4 teleporters in the arena. The rods will cleave the 2 closest players once they go off. 2 of them will go off first, then the other 2. Which one goes off first is 50-50. Either the inner ones will go off first and then the outer ones, or the other way around. You can see which one it will be after the banishment cast, as the first ones to go off will have a visible spinning clock hand under them. At the same time, every player will get a personal teleporter under them that will go off a bit later than the one set in stone on the floor. The rods will be split apart by lasers, so you have to take the teleporters to get to the rods safely. You are also forced to take the first teleporter, else you will just die from doom. So, you find the correct teleporter, go bait left and right, then your personal teleporter will go off, and if you identified the correct spot in the first place, you will automatically be teleported to the next rods. Now you might ask, how do you identify the correct spot? And that, my friends, is a damn good question. How I personally solve this in my head is, I look at my personal teleporter and check if it will be rotating north or south. That's easy to see, right? Okay. So I identify here, my teleporter will end up going south. Now what I have to do is check, is it in rods first or out rods first? And then I read the macro I post in chat every time. If it is in rods first, self-teleport south goes to C. Self-teleport north goes to A. If it's out rods first, it would be the other way around. Also, if it's out rods first, you start at the inner part of the arena and take the teleporter the other way around, like from inside to outside. I'll try to show a little clip of it. If you follow this, you will end up in the correct spot. Also, we made DPS adjust to the other side always, and if supports and DPS are paired together, we have just melees adjust, so tanks and the melee one. So, let's rewind a little bit. I see here, okay, my personal teleporter will turn into south. Okay, that's good. Is it in rod first or out rod first? It's in rod first. Okay, good. What does the macro tell me? Personal teleporter south, if it's in rods, will go to C. So I just go to C. All I do is I identify my own teleporter, and if it's in or out rods first, and then I read where the macro tells me to go. This will take some time, don't beat yourself up about it too much if you fail it. It's really confusing in the brain, but this is the best way that works for me, and I'm just gonna share it to you guys. The next mechanic will be mirrors with portals, but they are rather easy to solve, and if you mess up, you will not deflate immediately if you only get hit by one, you will just get a damage down. The possible patterns are out row corners, mid row corners, mid left or right, up left or right, bottom left or right. The easiest way to orient yourself is checking where the middle one will end up, and think ahead from there. We have a hard assigned corner for every one of us, so I always take the bottom right corner, no matter where the safe spot is, there will always be a bottom right corner. You have to actually stand in the corners, as the boss will jump on two targets again and repeat like the jumping and cleaving mechanic from the first mechanic, so be sure to be like spread apart enough of each other. It's better to just take a damage down than to yeet someone else off the stage, so if you kinda know you're too late and you messed up, then don't worry about it, just stand in the laser, try to not kill other people by it. Followed by this is the last mechanic of the fight. And I know people will blast me in the comments for this, like, "Ree, how can you do a guide when you don't even know how the mechanic works?" I have no idea how the mechanic works. But, listen, we never had to play the mechanic because we just skipped it entirely with damage. Even with deaths and multiple damage downs, we managed to skip this mechanic. So I took my time and checked how other people did it, so I can explain to you, like, generally the idea of how it works, but even other groups I tried to look at skipped it in the normal version. So this is really only relevant if you want to do the Savage version of the fight, because the Savage version has more HP and you will have to play the mechanic. So I looked up a kill video of a Savage version of the fight to explain it to you anyways. So what's going on is there will be another set of lasers with numbers, every player will get a number debuff, and there will be 4 rods going off one after the other. It seems to be hard-coded that 1 and 3 always start in the center, and 2 and 4 always bait the first rod. Everyone is in the inner lane. Then, after you bait the first rod, you break through the other side, where number 1 and 3 will bait the second rod. Stay where the rods were, as you will drop an AoE, and go back to the center. Now open the gateway to the next spinning rod and have numbers 2 and 4 bait again. Dodge the shadows on the floor, then open the gates again and 1 and 3 bait the last one. This looks horrible, but I would recommend you practice it in non-Savage, just practice the mechanic, because in Savage if you wipe you have to redo the entire dungeon from the beginning and it will just be a pain in the ass. I'm very thankful to have found this footage. It is from Mr. Happy. If you don't know him, I will link the video down below, but you most likely know him. I will also link the channel, so definitely go by, say hi. Sorry for not knowing the last mechanic firsthand, but I hope this will still be helpful to some of you. If you don't want to miss future content, make sure to subscribe and have fun dungeoning.